Talking of left-wing, let's move on to our next guest, who is not, I think, particularly left-wing. It's the Spectator's columnist and political commentator, James Delingpole. Good morning, James.
Hello, Kevin. I'm outraged at the suggestion that I might not be left-wing. I think a lot of left-wing respect me as the voice of the socialist revolution. But there we are.
Yes, they certainly do. Have you read your old university friend Boris Johnson's article in the Mail on Sunday today? It was so full of metaphors and allegories, I could hardly understand it. We are so nearly out of our captivity. We can see the sunlit upland pastures ahead, but if we try to jump the fence now, we will tangle ourselves in the last barbed wire. What do you make of that?
As you know, I didn't actually read it because I didn't need to read it. And also I would have brought up my breakfast had I done so. But as you know, Kevin, I attended the same educational establishment as the Prime Minister at the same time. And there was one technique above all we learned, which was to use language in order to be able to bullshit, to be able to obfuscate, to be able to dissemble.
Yeah. Obfuscate is the word, James. Obfuscate.
Yeah, obfuscate.
Yeah.
Because what Boris is doing, he's using, he at one point I read the pull-out quote. He actually compared all these scientists producing these extremely dodgy sounding vaccines, which no one in their right mind is going to take until they've been tested for at least 10 years on other people, on guinea pigs. Yeah. He likened these people to the Prussians at Waterloo. So these scientists already making like bandits on these massive government contracts which have been awarded to vaccines which may never be fit for purpose. He's likened these people to Blücher coming to save our bottoms at Waterloo and win the battle. He is a fraud, Boris Johnson. He is unquestionably, against stiff competition from Ted Heath and David Cameron, Theresa May, he is by far the worst Prime Minister we have ever had. And it just, the idea that we should have to listen to his rubbish, read his rubbish in Sunday newspapers is an affront.
He is, of course, also, James, the official spokesman for his group of mad scientists called SAGE, who are now advising us, not advising us, their guidance is we mustn't play board games at Christmas. If we must hug or kiss Granny, we have to take her outside first. We have to leave the windows open all throughout freezing Christmas Day. Up in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon is advising her citizens how and where they should do their Christmas shopping, and her clinical director is advising long-suffering Scots exactly how they should serve roast potatoes. This is out of control, isn't it, this nonsense?
Look, the only way of understanding it, and I think a lot of people are coming around to this position now, this is not about the virus. It was never about the virus. It is about control. It's about power. The reason that we are required to wear masks is not because masks make any difference. We know that now from the big study in Denmark. They make no measurable difference to whether or not you get coronavirus. They are a symbol of government power. We have been literally muzzled. Look again at what was happening in the streets of London yesterday. The police brutally putting down demonstrations in a country which up until now has prided itself on freedom of expression, freedom to protest. If those demonstrators been protesting against, if they'd been holding Black Lives Matter placards, or if they'd been gluing themselves to the pavement for Extinction Rebellion, or actually doing damage or closing down thoroughfares, they would have been treated with kid gloves. But the police sent in their boot boys. They sent in their hard men. Some of them, I think, weren't even regular policemen. I think that they were kind of mercenaries. There are rumors about this. I think we should get to the bottom of that. But the way that, arresting a man dressed as Father Christmas, for what? For walking down the street dressed as Father Christmas?
He wasn't doing anything, was he? That Father
If you've
Christmas
been Black
wasn't
Lives
doing
Matter
anything.
Father
They
Christmas.
literally just arrested him. What about, there is a disparity. There's no doubt about it, a disparity between the way the police treat Black Lives Matter demonstrators, taking the knee, bowing before them, watching them throw statues into the river, and the way they treat lockdown skeptics, the protesters in London today, which I think is quite alarming. What do you make of the way the media, in particular, the mainstream media as they call it now, the way that they are so disparaging about these protesters yesterday? There were thousands of them out in the streets. Now, they're being dismissed as loonies and cranks. They're not. They're just sick to death of lockdowns, of these crazy policies that don't work.
More than that, Kevin. Those people are heroes. I salute everyone who came out yesterday, and I salute all the people who are going to pluck up the courage and who are going to go out again, because this is the only way I think we're going to make our voices heard. Peter Hitchens has got a very good idea. He's in his Mail on Sunday column today, characteristically robust. Hitchens called it right from the start. He says that we should all write to our MPs saying, if you vote for this tier system, which is lockdown 3 by any other name, if you vote for this tier system on Tuesday, you are not going to get my vote at the next election. And I think we all need to do that. But I think what we've seen so far from our parliamentarians is that they are going with the establishment. They are sending form letters to their constituents, still claiming that they believe that coronavirus is a serious threat and that the measures being introduced to combat it are proportionate. This is not the case. So going back to the people who risked being beaten up by the police yesterday, and it's interesting, isn't it? If you look at the footage from the demos, the police often target women. And the reason that they do that is because they know that the men among the demonstrators, their gallantry will be piqued, and they will try and go to rescue the women or whatever, and then the police can go in hard, claiming that the crowd are being violent. It's really, really dodgy. You ask me, why is it that the police respond one way to these demonstrators and another way to the Black Lives Matter and to the Extinction Rebellion? It's because actually, Extinction Rebellion, for example, their aims are the same as the government's. That's the thing. Look at what Boris has done. He's
Green Industrial Revolution.
Yes, he's killed millions of jobs. He's destroyed lots of functioning businesses. They'll never come back. Cafes, pubs, all sorts of things. And what does he announce in this time of crisis when all anyone could think about is, how am I going to survive next year? And what does he do? He launches this 10-point plan for a green revolution and tells people that in 10 years' time, we're all going to be boiling our eggs with hydrogen. Well, no one cares about this thing. No one cares about being banned. Well, they do care very much about having their diesel or petrol cars taken away from them and replaced by electric cars they can't remotely afford, and there aren't enough charging points. I mean, it's pie in the sky stuff. But again, the government should have come down hard on the Extinction Rebellion protesters who closed the streets of London, I think twice last year, at massive expense to the public exchequer. Instead, they treated them with kid gloves, but they are coming down brutally hard on people who are protesting about something that really matters, the destruction of our economy for no reason whatsoever.
Now, what I feel about this tier system, I don't know if it's deliberately confusing, but it is confusing. So the entire nation is obsessing on what they can and cannot do. Can we kiss Granny at Christmas? Can we serve roast potatoes like this? Is it all right to play Monopoly as long as we disinfect the pieces first? All that nonsense. That deflects from what we really should be discussing, in my view.
Yes.
And that is the central narrative that all this is necessary. These are the statistics. 99% 99.5% of people who catch COVID-19 recover after a few days. 95% of those who die from COVID have other very serious conditions. So they didn't really die of COVID, they died of another condition. 53% of those who die from COVID are over 80, and the number of people under 40 who have died purely from COVID is just over 200. So the real question, what we should be discussing is any of this necessary? Are any of Boris's ludicrously drastic measures actually required?
We are being played. We are being treated like prisoners. We are being given tiny little treats by our warders to distract us from the bigger picture that we are still in prison. You know, we're being encouraged to focus on the rations, or whether or not we're allowed to have TV rights in our cell or not. Meanwhile, we are stuck in prison for no reason whatsoever. There is absolutely no reason for any of these measures. I was slightly appalled to read Dan Hannan, who I've always considered to be one of the sounder conservatives. Yeah, Dan's lovely. I mean, he's a lovely chap. He's very articulate, very good with his Shakespeare.
And usually on the money. Like usually on the money, I think.
Usually, but in his Sunday Telegraph column today, he talks about how, I don't know why all these headbangers are talking about the tier system being like lockdown. It's nothing like lockdown. Cheers. Why we're allowed to go and do... Well, I'm sorry, Dan. It is basically lockdown.
Tier 3 is worse than lockdown, James. Tier 3 is worse than lockdown.
It is. Yeah, you try telling a publican that tier 3 or even tier 2 actually is not the same as lockdown, and they'll say, mate, you're talking out of your hat. It's absolute rubbish. I think what's happening is that the Conservative government is waking up to how serious the popular uprising is becoming.
Agreed.
I think people have had enough, and Dan would have been primed, I imagine, by Conservative Central Officer. Dan, could you write us a helpful piece explaining that Boris is a libertarian? Really?
Don't anyone ever tell me again that guy is a libertarian. No libertarian will be doing what Boris Johnson is doing to this country right now.
He's a libertarian in the way that Stalin was a libertarian, which isn't very.
Yes, quite. What are we going to do going forward? I think that these protests that the media are trying so hard to be contemptuous about, wrongly in my view, they're going to get worse. They're going to intensify. The deepness of feelings is going to intensify. That's being reflected, bless their hearts, in 100 Tory MPs who are going to rebel against this ongoing nonsense. The tide of opposition to Boris's coronaphobic obsession is getting worse and worse and worse. He's getting backed into a corner, isn't he?
Yes, and this has come not a moment too soon. Have you noticed that there has been a shift? I mean, okay, so the media coverage, I agree, of yesterday's demonstrations has been absolutely dismal. But at the same time, the Daily Mail, which I think in some ways is the most influential newspaper in the country, which has been cheerleading the scare story for the last, 8 months, has really come around recently. It's been running a lot more skeptical stories.
Yes, it has, yeah.
And I find that to be a very encouraging sign, because let's be honest, the media has been bought and paid for by the government throughout this. The government has been paying full page book rates for advertising its propaganda in the newspapers. You've also got deeply embarrassing situations like the Telegraph has received millions from the Bill Gates Foundation in order to promote global health, i.e. Bill Gates's agenda. I mean, I'm sounding like this ought to be a conspiracy theory, but it's a fact that the government has been paying the newspapers to produce propaganda. The Bill Gates has been paying newspapers to produce propaganda. And our press, which in the past has been very robust in defending our freedoms and sticking up for our rights, has has really not behaved well in this pandemic. They've cheerleaded it all the way. I mean, obviously, no one's as bad as Piers Morgan, but let's not go there. But finally, the media is waking up to the fact that there's not going to be any Britain left to buy the Daily Mail if we're not careful. And I think, it's good. Better late than never, I say.
Yeah, or to fund the NHS. I have to say that there are opposing opinions to yours. Some people would not agree with what you say, James. I think I'm veering towards what you say being well worth listening to, as always. And I think I should
don't get sacked.
I should advise you, James. You just stop sitting on the fence, all right? Okay, thanks so much for your time, James Delingpole, the uncompromising columnist for The Spectator.